It is now 3 o'clock, and because we want to finish on time, we're going to start on time, and we're going to go ahead and call to order the September 5th meeting of the Blueprint IA Board meeting. I want to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. As a reminder, we're expecting all participants in this meeting to conduct themselves professionally and to treat others with respect, consistent with the requirements of Robert's Rules of Order. We ask that you all address your remarks through the chair. As our agenda for this meeting is the election of a new IA Board Vice Chair, I want to start by thanking Commissioner Carolyn Cummins, who's not with us today, for doing an outstanding job as our IA Board Chair for this past year. As I mentioned, she's not able to join us, but hopefully she'll go back and watch this meeting and recognize that we certainly do appreciate the leadership that she provided for this past year. And so it is my honor to serve as chair, and thank you for your vote of confidence in doing that. Please note that at 5 p.m., we will convene the second and final public hearing on the agency's budget. That's at 5 p.m. Okay, we'll go ahead and begin our agenda. Mr. White, are there any agenda modifications?
No, Madam Chair, but Commissioner Porter is unable to attend in person, and so we would need a vote to allow her to participate telephonically.
Is she connected? Okay.
Madam Chair, I would make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second that we allow Commissioner Porter, once she's connected, to participate telephonically. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Just let us know when she's connected. Thank you. Okay, next we'll move to our citizens to be heard on non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We do not have any speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to our informational items and presentations. When we have no presentation, correct? Nothing's changed on that. And do we have any items that's been pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. Item number 2 and item number 5 have both been pulled from consent.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any speakers on the consent items?
No, we do not.
Okay, so can we go ahead and move the consent agenda minus item number 2 and 5?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And this requires a roll call. Well, we can do a voice vote. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Thank you. All opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now address the items that were pulled from consent. Item number 2, both items were pulled by Director Matlow, I believe.
Item 2 was pulled by Commissioner O'Keefe. And
Okay.
Item number 5.
Okay, all right. So for item number 2, Director O'Keefe, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For item number 2 on meeting schedules, to follow Robert's rules, before I comment, I'll make a motion for scheduling 5 meetings instead of the proposed 3.
Okay, was that a motion?
That was the motion, so we can start discussion.
To move from,
To establish 5 meetings.
okay. And I heard a second. So we're going to open the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quite simply, we've had very long meetings. And I think part of the reason is we reduced last year to 4 meetings from 6 meetings. So the way I conceive of it is if we have a year's worth of business, packing it into 4 meetings had a part in making very long meetings. And that's not fair to us, and that's also not fair to citizens who should be able to reasonably observe us. And so I think 5 meetings is a good compromise, and that way we can spread out our business, and I think we'll be able to have more reasonable length meetings. That's my thought. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner, Director Matlow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Commissioner. I agree particularly on the length of meetings that we've had previously. We always end up in a point where we have one meeting that has several subjects of public importance, and we get a lot of public speakers, and it drags out. so late that we don't even have a quorum at some points, and that's, I think, frustrating to board members. I know it's also been frustrating to local companies that have presented economic development projects that got shut off, that didn't have an opportunity for a vote, and then we only give 3 opportunities a year. I think it gets even more difficult, particularly for economic development proposals. How we have it set up now, where you have to come to this board to get that preliminary approval. So particularly looking at the proposed schedule going from September all the way to February, having that 5 months where official business can't be conducted, as well as project approvals or whatever may come up, I think 5 is a reasonable compromise. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Minor first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Blueprint is entering a phase where we're moving away from the project prioritization and project planning and design and shifting to construction. And so I can understand our staff's recommendation to go from our current 2024 meeting schedule down to 3 meetings. I understand that. It's reasonable. However, I can't support it because I believe that for at least another calendar year, we should provide the accessible frequency that we have with the current schedule. So, I think it's important for us to try to continue to build trust with the public. And the things that we do, the actions that we take, can sometimes inadvertently reaffirm a narrative that local government is up to something, that we're trying to reduce citizen transparency or that type of thing. And so I always think it's incumbent upon all of us to go the extra mile, to go above and beyond, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to show the public that we are being open and transparent, as well as, even more important, giving them the opportunity to take a look at blueprint projects. Now, we're having a lot of projects that go into construction now. I think if we have 5 meetings, I'm planning to support the motion on the table. If we have 5 meetings, maybe those 5 meetings will be rather short. I'd rather have 5 meetings, maybe they last an hour apiece. I'd rather do that than have 3 meetings and have it look like we're trying to have less communication with the public. So I support the motion on the table. I'm glad the item was pulled. As we go through 2025, if we have 5 meetings, they're all rather short because the projects are running fine. They're in construction now. There's frankly not as much direction setting from the directors. If we go into 2026, at that point, I'd be willing to consider a reduction of meetings then. But for another calendar year, I think it's important for us to maintain the meeting schedule. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask of staff the reasoning for recommending 3 meetings. There must have been some reason for you all recommending that.
Please.
Of course. Thank you, directors. When we looked at what we have coming up in the next year in terms of projects that would be coming back, we realized that we're very similar place to where we were in the Blueprint 2000 program when the IA board did meet 3 times a year. And so there's a historical precedent for 3 times a year about the time that the program reaches this point. Early on in the program, there's a need to have more meetings. We're working on prioritizing projects. We're looking at coming up with implementation plans and strategies. We're looking at developing the concepts for the projects that will get implemented. And so all of that work has been done. We have the direction from the IA board on them. And when we look at what we would need to be bringing back to the IA board next year, is very similar to when the IA board did meet 3 times a year. And so we were proposing that based on what we foresee in the future and precedent of having 3 meetings in the past. We also note that if there was a need for an additional meeting, whether that be an economic development project that comes up or something that is different on a project, the chair can always call a special meeting. So even if there were 3 meetings scheduled, there is the possibility for additional meetings as needed as well.
And I guess, Madam Chair, I don't have a one way or another. I mean, I will certainly make the meetings. But I would hate for us to come to a meeting and the meeting be 15 minutes long because there's nothing on the agenda. That certainly, too, is something to consider. And I think that's what we're hearing from staff, is that that could be the likelihood. You know, if we need a special meeting, chair is certainly at liberty to call the special meeting, but I would hate for all of us to show up here for a meeting and it's 15 minutes long. So, you know, consider that as you vote as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments
Yes.
on the number of meetings? Yes, sir.
I'm very comfortable with, thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for being a minute or two late. I'm very comfortable with the schedule as presented. I think that the staff's put a lot of time and energy and thought into the number of meetings. And as the Mayor Pro Tem just stated, hey, if we need to meet again, we can call another meeting. But I think for setting the schedule, this is strong, and appreciate what you're doing, and I'll support the motion.
Well, the
Motion is to go to 5
extend-
meetings.
Oh, to go to,
5 meetings.
I'd like to make a secondary substitute motion when appropriate.
Any further discussion? Director Welch?
Sorry, I turned that off. Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. I mean, on this one, I'm really kind of deferential to my colleagues. I understand staff's position, as Commissioner Richardson said. I was asked about this by the press 2 days ago, and I had not had my briefing yet, and my comment was simply that I suspect this is because we're at a stage of the game where staff doesn't think we need that many meetings. And I mean, we're sitting here with one item on this meeting. But at the end of the day, I certainly appreciate Commissioner Minor's sentiment and Commissioner Matlow's concerns and Commissioner O'Keefe's. I'm cool with it either way. Okay, I'll support it. If you guys want to go to 5, we can go to 10. I mean, I think it's maybe
Let's not
easier to
get
cancel one than it, I'm sorry.
Come back in.
I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying. It may be easier to cancel one than add one. And I know with economic development projects, it's a little more dynamic than the blueprint infrastructure projects at this point. So, I mean, I would, Commissioner O'Keefe, prefer if we offer a substitute motion to just do 4, like we had last year instead of 5. I think 5 is probably overkill. If we're at 4 now, 4 is probably acceptable going forward, given the volume that staff is telling us we're not going to have that much volume. I am sensitive to the concerns of the public, Commissioner Minor. I think that's a great point. We want to give everyone as much opportunity as possible to come in here and speak to us in a formal setting, even though we all know that they speak to us in informal settings all the time, and there's no, barrier to accessing us. So I will make a friendly substitute motion to just do the 4, if that is the will of the board and my colleagues.
I would second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a substitute motion made by Director Welch and second by Director Richardson. We need to have any further discussion. I see Director Caban be recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Director Bowers, if I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
Dr. Bowers, so what would the process look like if we have 3 meetings? If we have a company that's looking to enter the market, that we were looking to get non-competitive funds or get funds from OEV to support them. So we would have a motion at the end of one meeting to bring it back as an agenda item. Is that correct?
For the non-competitive, yes, but for the competitive program, it would just be a matter of us staff analyzing the receipt of those proposals, and then the next step, it would go to a committee that consists of the sitting, the current chair at the EVLC, as well as the members of the the IMC. And that way, if they vote to move it forward, it comes back to the IA board. So there are some steps in between. But as has been stated, these things we can't control. We try to do a really good job of recruiting companies. So whenever one is viable that presents itself, we would be very timely in bringing that and trying to get some type of recommendation and direction from the IA board.
Thank you. So on the non-competitive, so we would have a motion in one meeting, it would come back as an agenda item the next meeting. and then we would vote on it in that meeting. And sometimes those, in the second meeting, it oftentimes will get pushed to a third meeting. So what I'm trying to point out here is that with the proposed 3 meetings in a year, it's an 8 to 12 month process. And so I think when we're looking to trying to recruit businesses and spur economic development and trying to get companies to come here, most of those organizations aren't going to wait 8 months or 12 months and go through that process. I think it's more beneficial for us to be able to move quick. Additionally, some of the sentiment from the board in the last few meetings has been that they've run too long. I think if we scale back the amount of meetings we have, it's more likely that they will continue to run long. That's just some sentiment I've seen from commissioners speaking in previous meetings. I'll probably support Commissioner Welch's substitute motion at 4 meetings. I was going to support the 5 meetings. I just don't think that we should cut back to 3 meetings. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Minor, and then
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be really quick. Directors Daley and Richardson mentioned that if we had the 3 meetings and then the chair, for whatever, if we needed a 4th meeting, we could add one by the chair. I totally understand that. My thinking is if we have 4 on the books, it's easier for us to find 4 times when we can all meet. And if we need to cancel one for lack of significant agenda, it's easier for us to do that than it would be for us to try to add a meeting on later. So, okay, for that reason, I support the friendly amendment motion for 4 and looking forward to the vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Artie, you wanted to add something?
Yes, Madam Chair. I was going to note that if the IA board wished to keep kind of a similar schedule as we have this year, the date that would be commensurate with this year would be November 6th. So if you wanted to put that on the calendar tonight, you could include that as this date, and we would put it on the schedule.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? We want to do a roll call vote?
I'm sorry,
This way.
Madam Chair, if you could just clarify that you are voting on the substitute motion.
We're voting on the substitute motion to go to 4 meetings.
One point, Madam Chair, can we add the November 6th date to the motion?
Well, we can, but I thought that it might be good to determine if we're going to go to 4, and if we go to 4, then add the date. But I don't have a problem with that.
On point. November 6th of this year?
Of 2025.
2025, okay.
Okay, we're ready for
Calendar
the,
year, not this.
ready for the roll call vote.
Mayor Daley,
Yes.
Commissioner Matlow,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter, she is online.
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams-Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Caban, Commissioner Maddox,
Yes.
Commissioner Minor,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Keefe,
Yes.
Commissioner Proctor, and Commissioner Welch.
Yes.
Okay. That's unanimous. Hear ye, hear ye. Let it be said throughout the land that we have agreed and we have a unanimous vote. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the, and the November 6th will be the date, right? Okay, to keep in line with where we are right now, November 6th, 2025.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you. We will move on to the second consent item that was pulled, item number 5. It was an informational item, and Mr. White, do you want, I don't know who's presenting this, but would you want to share information about this information item, or Commissioner Matlow, you pulled it, you have a question, or what's
Yeah,
your
an
desire?
update on the item first would be great.
Say again?
An update on the item, a presentation on the item, and then I have some questions.
Well, the item is in the, you want to do a presentation?
I can provide an introduction. We don't have a presentation for it, but this is an informational item. The IA board has requested information about having an attorney position that reports directly to the IA board. Having that attorney position that reports directly to the IA board is a matter of the blueprint structure, which is established by the interlocal agreement. That interlocal agreement is with the City of Tallahassee and Leon County. So the very first step in moving towards having the attorney position that reports directly to the IA board would be for the City of Tallahassee Commission, the Board of County Commissioners to amend the interlocal agreement to create that structure. Then it would come back to this board after that to determine the details and the next steps and all of that. So, but the very first step would be amending that interlocal agreement.
Okay. So for clarity, even as an independent agency, this board doesn't have the authority to hire its own legal counsel.
Based on the interlocal agreement that establishes this agency, that's right.
So we set the entire policy for the agency, but our hands are completely tied to hire our own legal counsel. That was the concern, I think.
Well, I think,
Expressed
go ahead, I'm sorry.
the last time, this came up. I continue to have concern that we have a board of directors that doesn't have its own legal counsel. It's out of step with every other agency. I understand the recommendation is to ask the city or county permission if the IA board have its own legal counsel. I tend to disagree that that needs to be the process, but I don't have legal counsel at this board to ask. So, I mean, my recommendation would be, let's go forward with what is recommended. So I'd make a motion that we have the IA director contact the city and county and request that this board has a request that they initiate an amendment process so we can have round council.
Okay, there has been a motion and a second that we, please restate the motion.
Sure. That we'd have the IA director reach out to the city and county of this board's desire to establish.
Okay.
Clarification. When you say IA director, do you mean the chair of the IA board or the place director? I want to know who's
Sure.
responsible to
Sure. I'd be looking at staff.
Okay.
So the attorney's office or Mr. White.
Okay, Director Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, colleagues. This report indicates that the blueprint attorney reports to Artie, ultimately reports to Vince and Reese. In other words, under this arrangement, we have a concept of blind negotiation. Our staff can blindly meet, greet, bring to us what they desire, negotiating for companies which may consider coming here, and all the other discretionary roles which could and ought be this board of directors' role, but blindly our staff can negotiate. Secondly, our staff does most of the budgeting, which ultimately comes under Vince and Reese, as well as the blind negotiations. Then finally, all legal considerations come first to and under the, I imagine, authority, approval of Vince and Reese. So we at no point in the process of an independent board are free from the county administrator and the city managers' ultimate control over this staff and who they report to. I think I heard Commissioner Matlow suggest that at some point but we have had an independent counsel. And I agree with what was written here, that an attorney is needed for staff to negotiate these agreements and write out all the nice words, legal terms, all of that. They need that in-house person. But as a board of directors, we need an independent attorney advising this body, one that is independent of the city manager and the county administrator. Anything short of that, we're the rubber stampers, and we ought to change our name to who we are. This is why the legal advisement, which often this board is seeking creative modifications, we can't get it because we're locked into an ironclad thought form of legal counsel with Artie and with the city manager and with the county administrator. And what a lawyer does is negotiate, create, modify, and discover ways with which a body is seeking terms and renewal of agreements in some form or fashion. So I think this board is aware of my desire to see us secure an independent thought outside of the mindset and center, city manager and a county administrator that controls every facet of the staff, what they bring to us. They pre-approve what is presented to us. And I think that somehow, this is a strong word, but I think that's wrong. So I stand by the desire to bring back someone who's going to work for this board and not for Vince, for Reese. Thank you very much.
Any other, Director O'Keefe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the motion and agree with what the other directors who have spoken have said. I think if this is what the board, the majority of the board continues to ask for, we'll continue to try to get what we can, and the independent bodies can also see what they want to do within the process that's laid out currently. But I just want to state that I'm on board with what has been said. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Maddox?
I think your mic, you need to turn your mic on.
May I address the attorney?
Yes.
Madam Attorney, when you are answering questions before this board or performing the duty that you're performing in today, are you representing the interest of anyone? The board or the administration with which hires you?
If I may. Commissioner, my duty as a member of the Florida Bar is to be straightforward, answer the questions, and to tell you my interpretation of the law, the statutes, the policy, and the rules that apply.
I think
without bias.
Thank you. I think to have this conversation is almost in attacking the integrity of our attorney. I think that when you think about what she's tasked to do, or what that position is tasked to do as it sits here, is to give us what they believe to be right as far as ruling is concerned, based off of their knowledge of the law. I'm very confident in the attorney that we have. And so given that, I can't support the motion on the floor, but I think we should be careful in the way we state what we're trying to get to here, because it's almost as though for me, that we assume that if we have an attorney that's hired by this board, that attorney will have a different opinion simply because we can hire and fire that attorney. I don't believe that. And if I do have an attorney that I can hire and fire and that will change their opinion based off their hiring and firing, that ain't the kind of attorney that I want. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to vote against the motion on the floor. And if it does happen to pass at the county level anyway, I'll be keeping that same vote against us moving in this direction, as I don't see the need for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Caban.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Director White, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Why is so clearly, based on the agenda item, the structure of our attorney for Blueprint and the place is different than the county, than the city, and pretty much every other government organization. What is the reasoning of the difference? That's, I guess, what I'm having the hardest time understanding. You know, when you look at every other organization, there's an attorney that works for that board, right? So what is the reasoning for this structure, the different structure here?
Please, sir.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good example. The city has a specific structure where you have the city commission and the city attorney and the city auditor. All of those are laid out in the city's charter. Same thing with the county. You have the Board of County Commissioners, you have the county attorney. All of that is laid out in the county charter. The closest thing we have to this body is the interlocal agreement. That essentially is the interlocal agreement is essentially the charter for this board. And much like the city charter and the county charter that create those positions and outline the responsibilities and the reporting and all of that, The interlocal agreement would also need to do that. So if you wanted to change the structure of the city or change the structure of the county so that you have another position that reports to the commission, you would need to amend the charter. And so it's the same kind of logic. If you want to have a position that reports differently to the IA board, it would be much the same process, except for it's not the charter process. It would be the interlocal agreement that needed to be amended. That would be the process. It's, essentially the interlocal agreement would be the charter for this body, the way the city's charter is for the city commission, the county charter is for the county commission. And to change the structure, you would have to amend each of those respective documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Attorney, what was the start date for the interlocal agreement?
The current one is 2015. Initially, the very first one was year 2000.
So we've had an interlocal agreement in place since 2015.
The current interlocal agreement.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to establish that because nothing has changed in all of that time.
So overall, it's 24 years.
24 years.
The current agreement is 9 years.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Director, I don't know which one of y'all were first. We'll go with the dean. Director Proctor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commissioners, Commissioner Maddox, I don't know if my interpretation of what I said by you is an attack on our sitting attorney. It's not. I clearly indicate that I believe that there's enough work for our sitting attorney to do exactly what's been captured and what's written to us today. There is a place in-house for counsel, and perhaps this counsel will continue to do well. But I am aware, and I hope that you would appreciate that I'm talking about structure, organizational structure, that when our manager and administrator reach consensus, staff has reached consensus, our attorney has come to some agreement with them, and it comes to us. These recommendations come locked and loaded. They're almost the irrefutable coming down of Moses off of Mount Sinai with the laws of God. And when our staff, coupled with our attorney, coupled with the city manager's blessing, administrator's blessing, is almost takes what we almost are, we never win, put it like that. On top of that, we have given permission for our staff to have secretive, outside the sunshine negotiation with our name, with our money, and they make commitments. And their staff's lawyer, attorney, who's in the mix, decides what those agreements are. And there is never an alternative word legally. We have no alternative voice. And reasonable people often may not agree. Likewise, legal attorneys, if reasonable, may also not agree. And I believe that for the amount of money that we have and the quality of balance that we're seeking, we deserve to have our board, an independent counsel's view, and one that has not been secretively meeting with staff, with management, and with the potential vendor or business type. I need someone who's not been in that room to look at that sheet of paper to make sure we're tight and right. It's not an attack on our counsel. I think she should stay there and advise and all of that. But I think that this board should not be facing the weight of all of that combined strength when it's a recommendation. We have no place of appeal in terms of fault extracted from the milieu of agreement that's been attained. And when that kind of consensus comes that tight, it's a colossal mindset that's damn near impossible for any of us to chip away at. We deserve to have, under this kind of arrangement and structure, independent counsel. Thank you.
Director Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Commissioner Proctor. This is a policy. question. The way we're set up with our council is abnormal compared to other public agencies. Nobody's attacking the integrity of anyone at this table. But along those lines, we've experienced that at the City of Tallahassee, where staff members attacked the integrity of our city attorney. As a result, we lost a well-qualified city attorney because sometimes an attorney's role will be to tell staff no, that they need to do things differently, because we want our attorneys to be most responsive to the will of the board, but even more so to the will of the general public. So it does create a bit of a conflict there when we have staff members directly at odds with our attorney's opinion. I'm not suggesting that that's happening at Blueprint, but when we speak to the integrity of an individual, I think it should be noted that it's not always as night and day as you kind of made it out to be. So again, no disrespect to the attorneys. We need to cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure that these contracts go forward. But I do think as a public body with a duty to the public to come to this table and not have an attorney that is appointed or selected to represent our interests and by way of the public's interest, it puts us in a position. It exposes us to a risk that I don't think we need to have.
Thank you. Let me say this, if there are no other comments. We have danced around this issue at least 3 or 4 times, and no matter how it changes or what have you, the goal seems to be the same. I hope that whatever we vote on today and decide on, that we can accept it and that we move on from here. I hope that that's what we can do. So at this point, if you see no other comments. Okay. All right.
I have one speaker on item number 5, Dot Inman Johnson. Name and address for the record, please.
Dot Edmund Johnson, 2121 Trescott Drive, Tallahassee, 32308. And I'm trying to understand what the controversy is over item 5. It seems to just put the Intergovernmental Agency Board for Blueprint in line with each of the individual governments. In the county government, the county attorney does not answer or report to the county administrator. In city government, the city attorney does not report to the city manager. In each of those cases, the attorney reports directly to the governing board. And I don't understand why that should not be the case for this governing board. Even though it's combined, it seems to give the same structure that both governments have accepted for their own boards. And I hope the vote will be to support consent item number 5.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Madam Attorney, is a copy of the interlocal agreement available online?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's on our website.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, perhaps, and the public who may not be familiar with the interlocal agreement, can you take a look there and understand why it is different? As Mr. White just explained, the city is governed by a charter where it spells out who does what. The county, same, but for this body, for the past 24 years, there's been an interlocal agreement that has determined how this actually works. So that's where there seems to be a difference in how the governments work as opposed to this united body. This united body is governed by the interlocal agreement that has been in place for the past 24 years. So perhaps a review of the interlocal agreement online will help to clarify and help to understand why this is a little different than what we have with the city and the county. So, Ms. Johnson, you've had your 3 minutes. So we're going to move on. Are we ready? Any other?
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Director Proctor, I heard Director Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, I've served on this board for quite a number of years, and there has not been a time when this issue was questioned or was raised until, and I saw it happen, our current attorney disagreed with the board on a couple of occasions. And then the conversation began to be, well, maybe we need our own attorney. Well, what she has explained is even if we have our own attorney, they are not going to give us advice that goes along with what this board wants. Their advice is going to be legal advice based on what they are required to do by the Florida Bar Association. And so I have to believe that that has been part of the issue, is that our current attorney has differed with the board on a couple of occasions, maybe more than 2, and there has been a desire to not have her, our particular attorney who represents us now, represent this board. I feel that very strongly. And so I'm going to vote against the motion, and I will vote against it if it comes before the City Commission for consideration.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Director Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm simply getting, and I appreciate Director Richardson's comments, and contrary to what he's outlined, though factually, we see value that our attorney has disagreed with us. But I'm talking about a conflict of interest, and the Florida Bar does not permit an attorney to represent 2 different clients in the same matter. I asked our attorney, who does she report to? She said she reports to Artie White, who reports to Long and Reese. Now, if that's not a conflict of interest that she reports to White, but she doesn't report to this board, can't you hear she considers herself as a staffer and not as an independent attorney because she reports to Mr. White. But this board needs as an independent attorney who is not sold out to, in thought, word or deed, to Mr. White and those things. She says that. So I view this attorney in the sense of the independence of this board, and I'm thinking she's paid out of the budget of the blueprint, and I don't see why this blueprint is so cheap that it won't hire a lawyer for this board, because this lawyer has told us out of her mouth she reports to Mr. White. We don't have a lawyer that reports to this board as such. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have my thing up with you. If you want to move on, it's up to you.
Well, go ahead. I don't want to deny.
I just, Madam Attorney, if you allow, Madam Chair.
Please do.
Madam Attorney.
This will be our final comment before the vote.
Who do you report to again?
I report structurally as a matter of an HR arrangement to the Director of Police.
Who do you represent?
My responsibility in terms of the interpretation of law and policy is to the board as well as to the agency.
So,
And there is no conflict of interest.
Thank you, ma'am.
conflict.
What I will say is that I appreciate Commissioner Proctor and Commissioner Matlow's comments about this not being about integrity in our attorney and that it being about structure. I respect that. And I appreciate that because I do think our attorney has done the best job she could, and I think it's a good job of representing the board in our interest. But I will say that, you know, when we look at structure and how we do things at each level, city, county, and blueprint, though the city and county attorney report directly to the board, they do the same thing that this young lady does, in that they represent the interest of those boards. They don't represent the interest of individual commissioners nor the board and then the staff. And so it goes back to me appreciating the fact that the comment was made that this is about structure. And I want to frame the argument in that way. Is who she reports to, does that determine or the attorney reports to determine the job they're going to do and who they represent? That's the question that I have. If she reports to us, if the attorney reports to us, is that attorney going to do a different job that representing this board, which is what they're going to do either way, than they would if they reported to staff, and vice versa. So again, I'm comfortable with the structure, even if we're coming from a point of structure, which I appreciate the clarification there. I'm comfortable with the structure, and I'll be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We're ready for the vote. Can someone please restate the motion so we can be clear on
The motion is to direct the police director to contact the city manager and county administrator to express the IA board's desire to establish an independent board council.
Okay, and it was second. So we're going to do a roll call vote on that, please.
Mayor Daley?
No.
Commissioner Matlow?
Aye.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
No.
Commissioner Williams-Cox?
No.
Commissioner Caban? Commissioner Maddox? Commissioner Minor?
No.
Commissioner O'Keefe?
Yes?
Commissioner Proctor?
Yes.
And Commissioner Welch?
No.
The motion fails. Thank you. What is?
It was, if I may,
Yes,
it
please.
was 29 yeas on a weighted vote and 36 nays. So the motion failed.
Yes.
Madam Attorney or Artie, if that motion did not pass, it does not have a change in interlocal agreement on any terms, does not have to originate from this board. It can, in fact, originate coming from city or county, correct? Thank you.
Madam Chair? Do we need a vote to accept the report, or no?
It was for information only.
I-
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to move on to the next item? Or is it item, so we're on to the next item?
No, because the agenda is still the agenda. We're just fulfilling the agenda. What we did was we dealt with the consent items that got pulled. And so now the next agenda item, we'll go to the next agenda item. For
Okay.
general business, right?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. Okay, so moving on to the general business, we'll have item number 6, election of the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency Board Vice Chair. Do we have any speakers on this item?
No, we do not.
I see that we have Commissioner Maddox and Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Maddox, you recognize first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion for Commissioner Welch to be elected vice chair of the IA.
We have a motion and a second. we'll now go into discussion, Director Proctor and then Director O'Keefe.
Support Commissioner Welch.
I support Commissioner Welch. I just feel bad for him. I think he'd be the third county commissioner who's both county chair and blueprint chair.
Well,
It comes with the
are you
territory.
healthy, you healthy and strong?
Actually would not be correct. If I am fortunate to be reelected, I'd be county chair. Next year, this is to be vice chair under Commissioner Williams
Yeah.
Cox, I believe.
Okay, are you healthy and strong?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion for, and a second for Director Welch. Do we need to do this by roll call vote, or we want to do it by general voice?
Voice
Okay.
vote.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Okay, Mr. White, do we have any other items coming before us here?
We did receive a speaker on unagendaed items, so if
Okay.
you'd like to take that speaker.
We take that speaker.
Stanley Sims. Name and address for the record, please.
Stanley Sims, 1320 Avondale Way. Last time we had a meeting here, the faith-based community came in and said that God had given them a vision, and they needed your cooperation, that if you not give them any money, but just create an avenue, because they felt that God was going to create a mechanism to get affordable housing off of the street. I don't know if you all have ever seen homeless people to the degree I've seen them, but that's something you can't unsee. I've seen mothers with children by dumpsters sleeping in cars. These people came with faith, and you told them, well, I think your faith is not in the right place. Well, 3 weeks ago, Commissioner Minor, our new vice president, who's running for president now, announced a new initiative to combat low, unaffordable housing that is not available. She said that what she wants to do is to put about $50 million, don't quote me on the numbers, and she says she wants to partner with cities and states who remove barriers so that we can get some affordable housing. So why am I saying that? I'm asking you to reconsider. This is a non-fiscal item. All we're asking you to do is just set up the model. Because as they said, they have the faith that something is happening. Now I want to move forward. Where was the scrutiny when we were going to have a big old aerospace project at the airport? We didn't have any concrete proof. All we heard was some guys in some nice suits that gave us and where are they at now? They're gone. Let's treat our people with a little bit more. Is that working, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure. I just wanted, I ain't as smart as you guys.
30 seconds.
But I pay my taxes. I should be able to get fairly heard and just be treated with respect. Please reconsider. Hebrews 13:1.
That's 11-1, Stanley.
I'm sorry.
Are there any other speakers?
No, ma'am, there are not.
Okay, we'll now go into director discussion items. You
Going around the table, Madam Chair, how you
don't
wanna-
feel compelled to have one, but
You going around
you
the
do.
table, or you just,
Let's do it the usual way. If you have a discussion item, let's just raise your hand, raise your finger, raise your Director O'Keefe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things, but I think the first one is most important. As was discussed and we've heard in the news, the Blueprint Animal Shelter renovation that updates the dog kennels, doesn't increase, but and also updates the vet center and everything is going to be underway this month. And my understanding is the construction company has committed to 37 outdoor dog kennels during the 9-month to a year temporary thing. But I would like to see some alternative options from our project budget or delay until we can have options where we don't lose capacity. Here's what I mean with this. As someone who fosters and has volunteered there and has heard from a lot of the volunteers, first I want to say our animal shelter staff are incredible and have for years go above and beyond, and it hurts them more than anyone to have to make tough decisions. I want that to be clear and thank them for that work. And a lot of them work in, sometimes positions are empty and it's tough, so I just want to be clear on that. But to spend a year in what is already an overcrowded shelter because of just a systemic issue of the rise in lost dogs coming in, I don't think that it's acceptable and our community would expect us to reduce from 50 kennels to 37 to do more harm while we're trying to improve. And that is, let's be clear, the shelter has been promoting, getting fosters, waiving adoption fees, doing all kinds of events, and those things help. But the reality is that when we talk about tough decisions with less capacity for 9 months to a year, it means more euthanized adoptable dogs, which nobody wants, especially shelter staff. And so I don't know if it needs to be a motion or if it's even possible, but I would like Blueprint to consider putting some of the funding or renovation project into finding a way to get and keep the 50 kennel capacity during the time. I'll note that we have, you can rent portables and things like that and other options. And note that around the shelter, we're lucky that we have Tom Brown Park that is completely government owned to give some flexibility. And so I don't know, Madam Chair or staff, if that's something we can do as a vote or if a vote's needed. But I think it'd be important to our community that when we improve our shelter, we don't do more harm in the temporary. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that. We had a presentation at the City Commission meeting regarding it, and I know that our staff is working very, very hard. And I think that's probably where the responsibility lies, to try to find those solutions, not Blueprint. So I think we hear loud and clear that we're trying to do the best we can, but I would not want to be the one to delay the start, because the longer it takes to start, the longer it's going to take to finish. And we got a really hard push by our animal shelter staff to make these improvements. So at some point in time, we've got to begin to get them done. But I believe that we're smart enough and committed enough to figure out the best way to try to make this happen with the help of our citizens who are going to help us continue to do what you're doing and others are doing by adopting and fostering. I saw that a local television station is doing an adoption event this weekend. So more and more of those. I think we just need to let those who are in this line of work help us figure this out. And so I know that Ashley Edwards and her team are working on that. I would not want to take Blueprint from the wall that they're working on to get involved in this. And so, of course, if there is a need to do something, Blueprint is needed, I'm sure that she will reach out and make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your concern.
Absolutely. And I would just say, personally, I know we joint fund the shelter, and so if there's any way that there's some temporary funding needed, personally, I'd be very happy to bring that over there.
Okay.
So yeah, the only other thing is, and again, it's not a motion, it's just, I really think we've learned repeatedly, and it's been very clear to us, we don't supervise the staff, the director. The only people who report to us is the IMC, which is made up of the county administrator and the city manager. And of late, they are not in attendance at our meetings. And so I believe that an oversight board should have the only group that reports to them be in attendance at meetings. It's important to have staff with us with detail. We don't expect the IMC to have every detail the staff does, but I think it's unusual, and I think if we are going to do the oversight that the interlocal agreement is structured for, I think we should expect the body that actually reports to the board to be in attendance. That's not a motion, that's not a rule, that's not a thing, but I hope that we'll consider that, and I think it's an important thing. Just from structurally, again, if you can believe it, I often feel bad for our staff who have to take some of the hardest questions, that some of them are real leadership questions from the group that reports to us. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
I'll come back, but he's on point.
on point, may I address Commissioner O'Keefe?
Yes, please.
Commissioner O'Keefe, I appreciate you bringing up the shelter issue. And it's a much deeper issue than just brick and mortar. Ironically, I just spent the past 2 hours prior to this meeting at the animal shelter, taking a tour, talking to the great men and women, and you're absolutely correct. The staff out there is second to none, and they're fantastic. I find it troubling, though. Well, first of all, I want to address, you posted online that we do not have a plan. I want to reassure you that the City of Tallahassee does have a plan. Part of the problem is the county has changed their position in the plan. Let me explain. When we bring shelter animals in, they're either brought in from the unincorporated or for the city. There are policies that used to be aligned, exactly the same, especially when it comes to the petition for ownership. And in the past 12 months, the county has changed their position on petition for ownership. Why is that important? So we had the DeBall case that's currently in the courts right now, criminal, where the lady we all saw had 90 dogs, came from the county, unincorporated, into the shelter. It's the county's responsibility to petition for right of ownership. What does that mean? That is what allows, in civil court, the shelter to put the animals up for adoption. That is what allows the shelter to put those animals in foster care. That is what allows the shelter to put those animals in rescue. Because the county, after formal requests from the city attorney's office, has refused to file in civil court a petition for ownership. This is a new policy. The old policy that was established in the interlocal agreement for the animal shelter was always, we would always file for petition for ownership. This has changed. This is new. We now have two cases. We have the DeBall case, DeBois, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, of 90 animals that are in our shelter that cannot be adopted, they cannot be put in rescue, they cannot be placed anywhere but in the shelter, and now we have missed the window because it is tied up in this case. Had it been filed earlier, it would have alleviated this problem. We have another case that just came in from the unincorporated.
Madam Chair, is this Blueprint business?
Yes, because brought up because Blueprint is funding the renovation of the shelter.
And Commissioner Matlow,
Yeah.
Director Matlow, you're out of order. I gave permission on point regarding the shelter before the conversation.
Thank you. The second case that came in is also from the unincorporated. It's another 5 animals that the county has not taken the position to file for ownership, which does not allow us to have the dogs up for adoption or anything. I would seriously hope that my colleagues at the county would have a conversation about this policy. First of all, let's all understand why it changed 12 months ago, since we had a policy that was congruent since the inception of the animal shelter. And how are we going to move forward? Because this is actually a very big issue. This is actually the largest problem for our capacity right now. If we had petition for ownership, we could place those dogs immediately in shelter with a rescue, and it would alleviate the problem that we have. Now, I agree with you that we should always continuously, whether it's through Blueprint, the county, or the city, think about CIP money, brick and mortar money, when it comes to animal services in the shelter. And I'm a proponent, and I look forward to having that conversation as well at the city. But make no doubt about it, there has been a policy change at the county that needs to be addressed. And this is we are taking this very seriously at the city and I look forward to some resolution as well. So let's move forward in our respective bodies to address, in particular, the petition for ownership and how we're going to move forward together.
Did you, and I'm looking at you, Director O'Keefe, you wanted to respond, or?
Very, very briefly, yes.
Okay, okay. And then Director Minor and Director Matlow.
Thank you, Mayor. In my conversation with the county attorney, it was not clear that it was a policy change, it was legal. And so with this information, we'll go back with that. That's very helpful.
Point of clarification, you are correct. It is a legal interpretation from the county attorney's office that hopefully the county commission will have a discussion about with the county attorney. It is not a policy that you all have passed or not passed recently. But as the elected body, you have the ability to sit down with your county attorney and with the county manager to address it.
I will, and it will put me on just one more not friendly list at the Florida bar. But that's fine. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. And again, I do want to give staff credit and apologize if that's what I said came off at. There is a plan. I would just ask for more, sort of more, but I understand. And so I want to be clear that I don't think there's no plan. I think there's a plan that I would personally like to see more and find out how we can work collaboratively, even with county money, should we can bring it up. And then, again, just thank you for that, and I'm glad you're digging into it, and we can work together on it because it's an important issue. Thank you.
Director Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If Director Matlow's comments are pertaining to the animal shelter, you may want to, mine's on a different topic. Some of you may have seen in the Tallahassee Democrat today news of the Safe Streets for All grant application notices. The U.S. Department of Transportation has released the results of those grant applications. And first of all, I want to congratulate the City of Tallahassee for winning the $9.6 million to help out with the Jake Gaither neighborhood. That is a huge win, huge win. And so kudos to the mayor, the commissioners, and all the city staff that worked on that application. We also got news of the North Monroe Safe Streets for All application, and this pertains to Blueprint because of the matching funds that Blueprint will provide. Unfortunately, we got an award of $198,000, which is something we're grateful for, but nowhere near what we needed to address the fatal accidents that are along North Monroe and the lack of safety along that major corridor. So had a discussion with Greg Slay of the CRTPA today. He's of the opinion that we should reapply for those funds next year, which means that the Blueprint funds would also be required to be available for that second round of grant application. And if I remember correctly, the City of Tallahassee's application for Jake Gaither was a second attempt.
Yes.
So I just wanted to give an update on that in case people hadn't read the article. As we come up in the future Blueprint meeting, I, of course, will be advocating for a second application attempt to be given for the Safe Streets for All application. I think our chances are very good. North Monroe is a high injury network corridor with fatalities that need to be addressed. And so I think we've got a strong application. We'll make another run at it next year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Director Minor. We were together this morning in a CRTPA executive board meeting and was very happy about the designation for the city, hoping that the next application, the second time, will be the charm for North Monroe.
Sure.
Definitely. Director Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with both of you on the finding a solution for the animal shelter. I was just cautioning us if every time I had a grievance with the county, if we brought it here, these meetings, we might need even more meetings. I did want to talk about, get an update. From an OEV perspective, what's the status of Project Alpha?
Madam Chair?
Please.
Director Matlow, Project Alpha is a named project, but in name only. We never devoted or allocated any staff time to review that application, provide any type of economic analysis, because we never received the information to do so. So I think that would be a question better asked and answered by the airport at this point.
Okay. So was the name Project Alpha, is that assigned through OEV? When we have economic development projects that get
Right.
code names,
So-
can you explain the process?
Sure. The way it works when there is a potential economic development project, the first thing we do is provide a letter requesting confidentiality, and we name that so we can have discussions regarding the specific application, and it could be not subject to the Sunshine Law. Therefore, we could discuss the particulars of that application. Sometimes it involves sensitive information such as corporate filings, tax returns, current financial statements, and ownership percentages and such. But we do that as a matter of practice, even though we haven't received information, because once we receive it, without that confidentiality agreement, it becomes public record. So in this case, we set up the project name, but we never received any supporting documentation as to their ask or the validity of or having any type of idea of what the conceptual plans were.
Okay. And so are there any OEV communications with the company? In the newspaper, it was reported that Mr. Ben-Cree had been in contact in discussions for over a year. I'm wondering, did that not generate any type of application or further information about the project?
No, sir. No allocations were set aside for this project.
When the project initiated, did it initiate at OEV or did it initiate at the airport?
It initiated originally, from my understanding, I was not in the seat here, but it initiated at the airport.
And when a company has a code name such as this, does it continue to be exempt from public records? Madam Attorney, if I may.
No, that is a temporary exemption from public records up to 12 months, or it can be extended if the company requests that it be extended, and there are still ongoing negotiations. However, under Chapter 288.075, there are certain documents that will remain exempt from public records, and for example, that's trade secrets, proprietary business, confidential information. Those are permanently exempt from public records.
And when a company approaches OEV and wants to be under confidentiality and have a code name, is there any sort of process or vetting process before we go down the line to receive information or provide any type of background incentive conversations about what may be possible?
Are you asking, is before we establish a project name, do we do any vetting? Is that your question?
Yes, or at what point?
At the point which we receive the application information. So once we receive the application information for a specific incentive program, we then initiate a project name in anticipation of receiving sensitive documents.
And you weren't there at the time, do you happen to know the last time OEV communicated with the company?
I do not know.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm raising this concern here based on its history, but this was a project that was brought to the City of Tallahassee, heralded in June of 2022, $100 million investment, all these bells and whistles, purported to be a company from North Carolina doing a similar type of company, but there isn't a facility that, while they may be registered in North Carolina, there's actually no facility that we've been able to see anywhere. So I'm just curious of our processes, and I appreciate the answers of where we were along the line and when we do our vetting. As I understand it, no application came through OEV, so that would have been kind of the last stop here. But I know we'll be having this conversation at the city, but I'm very concerned when projects purporting to spend hundreds of millions of dollars get heralded to elected officials when an application hasn't been reviewed by OEV and official documents haven't been signed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Caban.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for staff in regards to the airport gateway. So just reviewing the agenda material earlier, do we have secured for the next 4 fiscal years the funding required for the different phases from FDOT?
Okay, so DOT has improvements identified for the Orange Avenue segment, piece of the airport gateway, and they have fully funded the design of the Orange Avenue, but they have not funded the construction yet for Orange Avenue.
So in the next 4 to 5 fiscal years, when are we going to seek funding from them for those different phases for construction?
Yeah, that's something that we'll work through with the CRTPA as we send our local priorities up. The Orange Avenue widening, while it's not the top project going up right now for our local, based on the CRTPA's priority list, it is, I think it's maybe in the top 5 project. Yeah.
I think
So
it's number 3.
maybe you would know, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, on the agenda material, it said the construction of the new roadway to Innovation Park is anticipated to begin in Q3 of 2025. I'm assuming that over the next year, we're spending more money on design and planning in regards to that road. When are we gonna go hard on our LOI with FSU?
Yeah, we've been discussing the joint project agreement, which would be the next iteration from the LOI, letter of interest. Yeah, letter of intent, sorry. And we've been coordinating with them. We've also been going through with them on the 60% design plans as well.
Okay, Madam Attorney, do we have any exposure or liabilities with the LOI?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. So our plan is just continue to we're spending money on it as business as usual. And right now, where we are in the project is we're seeking to go, I guess, hard on the LOI. Is that correct? What if I'm understanding correctly?
Right, moving into the JPA, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Director Proctor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like for our board to be informed on what triggers a secret negotiation. I'm interested to know what is it the staff can do by law outside of the sunshine with public dollars and commitments of public dollars, which we as commissioners, we can't meet in secret and stuff like that. I don't really understand. I would like for us to be updated, and if we can't do it publicly about the secret, I'm willing to talk with our staff one-on-one if that protects something.
I need some clarification. When you say secret?
Negotiation that our staff has with various businesses, such as the kind of arrangement that we have.
So OEV?
Yeah, the OEV has,
okay, no,
that we have oversight of, but we have no knowledge of, such as the negotiations that we put $2 million up out there on Highway 90 and Interstate 10, that kind of agreement.
For Amazon, you mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have other agreements. When does this trigger? I believe that I need to understand what triggers the agreement, the reference to what Commissioner Matlow talked about, the airport agreement. When do these things happen as a public official elected to make decisions? And often these things just come to us out of the spring up. I'm curious to know. I feel like I don't know the entire process of the deal making, the art of the deal.
Okay.
And for those who are empowered to do so, what powers trigger when and how much they can go in and make commitments for. I hope that's not a laughing matter to this board.
No, it's not. What I chuckled about was I had to think about I-10 and 90, because you were referring to the Amazon. Instead of telling me Amazon, you gave me
I couldn't think of them.
latitude, longitude. I had to translate.
Big as they are, they fell out of my little mind.
I hear you. So let me ask Director Bowers. I know you were not in the seat when the Amazon happened. There was also, since I've been on this board, there have been some others. There's a documented process that is followed? Is that something that you can share with? I mean, you don't have to share it here right now because Director Proctor said he'd have some one-on-one with staff to get that information. But if it's written or documented somewhere and you want to just share it with the entire board, email it to the entire board, that would be great. And then have a conversation with Director Proctor at you all's, when both of you are available to do so.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
What's
Will
a
that- will that-
document
will
or
that-
that's a meeting?
Both.
Okay, very good. All right, moving right along. Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, as I looked at our last meeting in February, one of those meetings in February, and looking at the proposal for what's being brought before us today, Commissioner Maddox, the sports component is not being projected with the fairground conversation. We had that component in the February document that was presented to us, and I'm wondering, was there a policy decision made by us? I know we needed about 86 million, we were told, to move forward with building the sports stuff, and staff just assumed for us that we no longer were going to include that. Had some direction from this board occurred, which I missed, and may not have been awake when we no longer decide to carry forth the sports possibilities along with the fairground imaginations for the future.
Okay, so your question is, what happened to the sports concept for the fairgrounds?
Or have we dropped it? I mean, just yes or no?
Okay, who can answer that? Thank you, Director Calder.
Yeah. So in February, the master plan for the fairgrounds project was approved by the IA board. And that master plan didn't include the sports, indoor multipurpose sports facility. But what it did include was a space accommodation for that to happen at some point in the future if funding and support for that became available. The master plan that was approved by the IA board not only identified the future space and reserved that space for that facility, but provides for the infrastructure that could support that facility, like upgraded utilities, stormwater, parking.
Does that
Kinda
answer your
spooky.
question?
No, it doesn't. It's kind of spooky. It's just done fell out of sight. It's captured on this sheet of paper. It's not captured in this sheet of paper, and it has just disappeared into.
Would you be open to having a one-on-one with Director Calder to further discuss that or get further clarification?
If that's what it takes to understand what's happening to the fairground project.
I want to get your answer to your question.
I mean, if that's what it takes. I shouldn't have to go behind closed doors when it was presented to me out here.
You can leave the
public
door
light.
open.
But I don't see it right now. Okay, I'll put that on my meeting with you guys. Then,
So Director Calder and White, would you all reach out to Director Proctor to schedule a time that's convenient for him to get that information? Is there anyone else who needs information regarding that? If so,
As I understand it, you said you're building an infrastructure much like we did on Gaines Street when it wasn't what it is now. Infrastructure was built for someone to come in and build on top of it. It was ready land for it.
please.
Yeah, it could be a private sector interest that comes in and does it. It could be a public-private partnership. It could be public. It just depends on what comes forward and it's right at that time.
And the monies that we've allocated towards have been allocated towards, the project. All that money has been allocated and spoken for. There's no way we can phase this thing in with more than just the infrastructure piece.
The funding for the project is at $30 million. We anticipate picking up the remaining $27 million next year through the bond, and that complete $30 million is needed for the basic improvements to the project that were part of the master plan, right? But it's not just, the master plan didn't include just the infrastructure. That was a big component of it, but it also included an indoor meeting space that would have amenities like a community room area, indoor restrooms, improvements to the fair, things like that.
That piece is still included?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
But the large multipurpose sports complex was not included.
Madam Chair, just on point, just to finish my comment, I think that we were always looking for, if it was going to happen, it was going to be a large amount of money. We're going to need either another pot of money for us to look at or a private partner to come in to build that facility and run it, much like what Mr. Ward is doing, Charlie Ward is doing at his ranch. That's why some of the thoughts I had is maybe they could do it on our plot of land, but they chose another, which is totally fine. But I like the fact that we're building the infrastructure, so it's ready land there. So if we do have a sports facility, a sports team, or an organization that wants to come in and build on top of it, we're ready for them to go right there on that piece of land. I would like for us to build it now, but I understand the prioritization that we have, not only on the fairground, but that space that you're talking about, the indoor meeting space that you're talking about, being prioritized with the $30 million that we have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you had an item.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
I was still.
Please continue.
Thank you very much.
Proctor, I'm sorry.
I'm open, and I don't care if ideas clash. We don't have to be on the same sheet of music. Oftentimes, rap, and it sells a lot, is not on the same sheet. What we need in this community is a conference center. And I'm not sure how our staff sees it, but it's a direct for our community, for its future and economic growth development, is to align a facility that affords the state of Florida, Florida State University, Florida University, and these elements to have business here. Madam Chair, you, Mr. Richardson, serve on the TDC, and you heard me ranting and raving, pleading and begging that how do we reach consensus with what to do? And this, we're underthinking the fairground. We're capped by, well, we got $30 million. Well, that's all we got. Yeah, we got $30 million. Well, like having 30 cents going to the fair, $30 going to the fair, you can ride on 1, 2, 3 things and, and hope that somebody gives you a ride or free ticket. We really need to think beyond what our staff limits are, and their limits are $30 million. The future of Tallahassee requires us to make an investment deeper, richer than $30 million. And I believe that the residual incomes, and I said and didn't say, you all have heard this before, Mr. Richardson and Madam Chair, y'all have heard it, but we have local organizations hosting a statewide event in another city seeking funding from TDC, but won't be funded because the heads that go into the beds are in another community, but the official host is from our community. But the inadequacy of our infrastructure in a state bubbling over with tourists, we just can't quite. And commissioners, I'm imploring all of us, we need a conference center badly. And I think that it ought to be a part of, or it could be a part of, fairground. I'm willing to scrap sports centers and all of that. Conference center, what we do up in here is talk, and folk that would come to Tallahassee to do continuation of talking. So I'm a little miffed by the, and I think that we ought to do more of the fairground. On the Thorpe Street project, it tells us that we will have approximately 2 years for the planning. Staff, I wanted to ask, what's taking 2 years to plan Thorpe Street? We've been talking about it for 1,000 years, and why do you project the next steps would take 2 more years to plan Thorpe Street?
Please.
Yep. Tharp Street is the Tharp Street project is a very long corridor. It goes from Ocala all the way out to Capitol Circle Northwest. So it's several miles. It's highly built up, very urban corridor. We are also in the planning phase, as you mentioned, and the typical planning phase for a project like this is 24 months. And that's for good reason. There are a lot of steps that are in that planning phase. It's called a PD&E, a Project Development and Environment Report, and we are following that to the federal guidelines. That's a federal report. It goes through many levels of review. And the reason that we're doing that is because it opens us up to receive federal funding for that project, which I think is which will be a huge benefit to the Blueprint program to get those outside dollars. So the typical process for something like that is 24 months. And we kicked that project off, signed the contract, I think, in April of this year. And we're right now collecting a lot of data and information. And I think we'll start really hitting the public outreach side of it next year.
Good, I think that right there should be a top priority of our board. If we can expedite that, consistent with what Mr. Sims shared with us today, faith community asked us to place something in public policy that if we had additional funding, we possibly could take that spillover amount surplus and put it in affordable housing. And he's absolutely correct. Vice President of the United States indicated that when she does become our president on November 5th, that she anticipates $50,000 to assist persons purchasing. I think if that becomes a reality on November the 5th, I would like this board to revisit, consistent just what you said, Ms. Caller, that anticipating federal dollars for Thorpe Street. And what Sims has said, we could anticipate federal dollars for affordable housing for communities that have likewise prepared and meet the minimum threshold for federal support and partnership. I will be very, very interested. And I'm interested not the strong arm of the Save My Side lost and the faith community got ran over and beat up. That's not the point. The point is that public policy changes in the federal orbit of distributing monies would have changed, and greater priority coming from the feds under our next president would have occurred. So I think that, and I say now, and we'll bring it up again in our next meeting, that whatever we can do to expedite and make ourselves ready to be a community that the federal government sees as user-friendly and focused and favored toward affordable housing. We should do that. And I think that policy with which the faith community was asking is similar to what Vice President Harris has been mentioning. Then finally, Madam Chair, I hate reading these books and stuff because it makes me have a lot of little stuff. Looking at Orange Avenue, starting from Adams Street down to Spring Hill Road, and this thing projects to stop to Spring Hill Road. What happens when you cross Spring Hill Road and this little narrow place where people walking on the side of the road, begging for money on the side of the road, and that little itty-bitty bridge right there, 4-lane coming down from Capitol Circle by Southwood, all the way down Orange Avenue, roundabout Rickards. Then you get to Spring Hill Road, and how will this project curtail? Will there not be a tail, if you will, a flourishing TAIL, tail off of this project that just stop suddenly and go to this narrow passage at Spring Hill?
You'll be happy to know that at every CRTPA meeting, Commissioner Richardson reminds us of that very thing. And the widening of Orange Avenue beyond that point is a topic of discussion, status, and where we are every CRTPA meeting. So it is, and CRTPA and Blueprint, we'll be working together, but it is on the radar to make sure that that gets opened up and widened, because we know what happens over at Liberty Park. I come through there too all the time, and if you're not paying attention, you can find yourself involved in an accident with the person. Yeah. If you're not paying attention. So there's great conversation with DOT at the table on what can be done and when it can be done to widen that area.
We'll And Commissioner Proctor, thank you for your interest in that. That is something that that I have been working on as a CRTPA board member for a number of months now. The plan is actually for the widening to be from South Adams all the way out to Capitol Circle Southwest. That's the long-term plan, not to just stop right there at Spring Hill Road and Liberty Park. And so they have done the, what's the?
Was it the PDE?
PDE. Yeah, they've done the PDE. What we're looking at now is simply getting the funding for that project.
Right.
And so that's where we are now. They've done the PDE. I think the right-of-way has to be purchased.
And of course, you know, it's,
well.
you know how it's broken up, you know, part of it's
Yeah.
the state, part of it's the county, and you know how
Yeah.
Orange Avenue is split into 3 different ways. So that part, I think, is state down that
It
way.
is.
So it's DOT.
Yeah, but we're on it.
Good. I was just reading, I'm disadvantaged from CRPTA notes. I don't get those, I'm not serving. It just said, it just told us what it told us here on page 7. Anyway, it just said that the roadway 4 lanes from Adams Street to Spring Hill Road and a period mark right there. That's all I got in a map.
Yeah, but the long-term plan is to take it out to Capitol Circle South.
I don't want that to be, I appreciate your advocacy on that.
Yeah.
Because that right there is going to be a disaster.
Oh, yeah, no
You
question.
can't leave that like that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam
Okay.
Chair. You've done a great job running our,
Thank-
governing our meeting today. And if I've said anything that offended any commissioner, any
I
staff
need a
person,
sticker. I want a sticker.
I put my hand on my heart and say, I apologize. No desire to offend anybody that's stable in this room, this community.
Thank you.
Just sharing cognitively what I'm sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for the attorney.
please.
Madam Attorney, is Commissioner Matlow's lawsuit against Blueprint still an active lawsuit in litigation?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I would like an update. I'd like to schedule some time in the future, one-on-one, to have an update on that particular lawsuit. In particular, I would like to know exactly how much taxpayer dollars out of Blueprint we have had to spend on the outside counsel for litigation. Thank you. And I only say that publicly because other directors might want the same information.
Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Director Porter, do you have anything that you'd like to bring forward?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, feel better. Thank you. So we, if all hearts and minds are clear, I don't see any things up, so okay. We have a hard start at 5 p.m. for the public hearing for our budget. And so we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you back at 5 o'clock for the budget hearing, public hearing on the budget. Thank you. Public hearing to order at 5 o'clock. We're gonna officially convene the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2025 operating budget and the 5-year capital improvement program budget for the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency. This is item number 7 on your agenda. And this is the second and final public hearing on the budget.
Chair, I move adoption of budget as proposed to the directors today.
Second.
For clarifications, that would be options 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. I have a motion to accept options 1, 2, and 3, and I have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any speakers?
I do have one speaker.
Okay. All right. I was going down my script, but, you know, I appreciate you trying to expedite it. Yeah. Okay, so at this time, we will hear from members of the public wishing to comment on the budget. Do we have any speakers?
Our one and only speaker is Dot Inman Johnson.
Okay, Ms. Johnson?
Name and address for the record, please.
Inman Johnson, 2121 Trescott Drive, Tallahassee, Florida, 32308. I'm speaking just for the public record because I know it won't do any good. I am totally opposed to the airport gateway route that weaves from Lake Bradford Road all the way through the Providence neighborhood and part of FSU, when the simplest route that takes you right out to Capitol Circle is Lake Bradford and Spring Hill Road. And at a far less cost to the public. I'm sure most people in the public don't realize that in addition to totally destroying a South Side neighborhood, Providence, by bulldozing through it for this route, it is going to cost us in tax dollars 4 times more than if the Lake Bradford Spring Hill Road route was chosen. And I'm here to say that this makes no sense at all. Costing the public that much more money to get a result that could get you to the airport faster and a straighter route. And like I said at the beginning, you're at the point where you've pretty much made your decision. This is a final public hearing. And I doubt if most of the people in this community even know what this will do.
Seconds.
So I don't expect to change your mind on this capital project, but I wanted to have my say because it's on behalf of the public and our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And let the record reflect that we've had representation from this neighborhood association to come in support of this. But thank you. I just wanted to just speak to that. Your time is up. Your time is up.
I didn't, my time
You're-
wasn't up.
Okay, well, it's up now. We're moving forward with, are there any other speakers?
Because Providence
Are there-
shouldn't
are there
have
any
to
other
bargain
speakers?
for sidewalks.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
No other speakers.
Okay. We already have a motion, and we have a second. This is a roll call vote, correct? So could we move forward with the roll call vote?
Madam Chair, is there a discussion on this item?
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just say I'm going to support this budget, even though I disagree with the funding priorities. I don't think they're in what the community's best interest right away, but I don't think we have the votes to change it, and so I'm going to support it. I just want to share my observations for people to consider.
All right.
So this budget and 5-year plan puts gateway project funding in front of other projects that I think are more important. For example, next year, the most money in the allocation, $6 million, is going to the airport gateway. Then you also have the following year, the projection shows the most money again of that year, $33 million, going to the airport gateway. Compare that to Tharp Street, which I personally believe is a higher priority. Tharp Street, most of the funding is deferred sometime past the next 5 years. Here are the numbers. It's an overall $50 million project. So far, we funded $3.5 million, and the projected estimated funding for the next 5 years is $9 million. So 5 years from now, $38 million of Tharp Street will still be unfunded. And I hate to see that critical Tharp Street work waiting to be really done or completed until then. Again, I'm going to support this because there are other important projects that I don't want to see held hostage. Even though they get smaller funding, they need to be done. For example, water quality and stormwater improvements, which we know we need with recent flooding and sewer leaks. We want to make sure we're top of the line and use that funding. Sidewalk improvements. This includes funding for sidewalk improvements, which, as we know, we desperately need to improve pedestrian safety. Again, supporting it because we have to get those other projects. Just commenting that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Director Caban.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be voting no on the budget for reasons I've discussed in previous meetings. I would say that I wish that we could have a bifurcated budget. So right now, everything is just bunched into one operating budget and all the projects are all together. In the county, we had the budget approved with like A, B, C, D, and E with different projects and different categories. And so that way you don't have to vote no on the entire budget. You can just vote no on a certain portion of the budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's move to the roll call vote.
Mayor Daley?
Aye.
Commissioner Matlow?
Nay.
Commissioner Porter?
Nay.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Yes.
Commissioner Caban? Commissioner Maddox? Commissioner Minor?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Keefe?
Yes.
Commissioner Proctor?
Nope.
And Commissioner Welch?
The budget passes. Thank you for your service. Thank you all for the opportunity to serve. And this concludes the second and final public hearing on the budget. And if there's no further business, we stand adjourned until our next scheduled meeting.
Great meeting.
My goodness.
Look at that.